The studio lights dimmed slightly as Dr. Phil walked onto the stage, holding a manila envelope that the entire audience couldn't take their eyes off. Today's episode wasn't just another family dispute or emotional confrontation. This one carried a tension that was almost physical. It sat heavy in the air, like everyone was waiting for a storm to break. Seated on the stage were Linda, a woman in her late 40s with trembling hands, and Eric, a young man in his 20s whose jaw was tight with frustration. They sat far apart, bodies stiff, eyes refusing to meet. The story they brought to the show was complicated, heartbreaking, and filled with years of unanswered questions. Linda claimed she was Eric's biological mother. Eric claimed she wasn't. For years, Linda had insisted she gave birth to him, but due to circumstances she described as family interference, she said she had been separated from him as a baby. Eric, on the other hand, arrived on stage with a completely different story, one filled with doubt, emotional pain, and deep resentment. Eric explained that he had never seen this woman in his life until a year ago, when she suddenly contacted him online and insisted she was his mother. "If she really is my biological mother," he said, voice shaking, "then why did she disappear for 22 years? Why did she wait until now to show up?" Linda wiped her tears, insisting she had the truth on her side, and that today's DNA test would prove everything. But Dr. Phil wasn't convinced either way. As he questioned them, it became clear both sides were hiding something. There were inconsistencies in Linda's timeline and suspicious gaps in Eric's knowledge of his own past. Something wasn't right. Something big was missing. And that was when Dr. Phil glanced down at the envelope, the DNA test that could end all doubts or create a bigger storm. The audience leaned forward. The tension was unbearable. Dr. Phil looked directly at the camera. "Stay with me," he said firmly. "Because when we open this envelope, this entire story may turn upside down." What happened next would leave both guests and the entire studio absolutely stunned. As the cameras rolled again, Dr. Phil leaned forward in his chair, elbows resting on his knees, his brows pulled together in deep concern. Part of him had seen stories like this before, families broken by secrets. But something about Linda and Eric felt different. The pain in their eyes wasn't staged. The confusion wasn't exaggerated. This wasn't about fame, clout, or attention. This was about identity, about truth. Linda took a deep breath as Dr. Phil asked her to explain the beginning, the moment everything supposedly went wrong. Her voice trembled as she described her life 22 years ago. She said she was young, overwhelmed, and trapped in a toxic relationship with an older man who controlled every part of her existence. According to her, when she gave birth to Eric, her former partner and his family convinced her she wasn't capable of raising him. "They threatened me," Linda whispered, clutching her hands tightly together. "They told me if I didn't leave quietly, they would keep him from me forever. I was scared. I was alone. And I believed them." The audience murmured softly. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others in sympathy. Eric's expression, however, didn't change. His eyes stayed cold, guarded, like he had heard this story 100 times but never believed a word of it. Dr. Phil turned to him. "Eric, you look like you're struggling to accept this. Tell us why." Eric exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Because none of this fits with what I was told growing up. I was raised by my grandparents. They always said my mom abandoned me at birth, that she walked away because she didn't want me. No letters, no visits, no attempts to reach me. Nothing." His voice cracked, just a little. "You don't forget that kind of thing." A heavy silence followed. Dr. Phil observed both of them, weighing their stories. Two narratives, both emotional, both painful, yet one of them had to be built on a lie. As the tension rose, Dr. Phil turned to the audience watching at home. "Before we continue, tell me this. APISS whacked kiss country yisiti esi dek rahiho? Comments mi liko, kyunki age johon wala hai. Wo apko completely shocked Kardega." He then shifted back to the guests. Linda insisted she never walked away, that she had searched for Eric for years, even after leaving the abusive relationship. She claimed she had filed reports, contacted agencies, and tried tracing old addresses, but everything led to dead ends. Eric countered immediately. If she tried so hard, why didn't anyone ever tell me? Why didn't she ever find me? Why am I hearing about this now, at 22? Linda broke into tears. Because every time I got close, your grandparents would move. They didn't want me near you. They told everyone I was unstable. They stole everything from me, including my son. A ripple of shock moved through the audience. Dr. Phil raised his hand calmly. Let's stay focused on what we do know and what we don't. He turned his head slightly toward the large screen behind them. We have documentation from both sides. But the paper trail is confusing. With a click of a remote, the screen behind them lit up with documents, hospital forms, signatures, reports, timelines. Some matched Linda's story. Others contradicted it completely. Dr. Phil explained. There's a missing period, nearly 8 months, where neither story fully makes sense. And that's why this DNA test became necessary. Eric crossed his arms tightly. I'm not here to hurt her. I'm not here to embarrass her. But I need the truth. I need to know if this woman is actually my mother, or if she's just someone who wants to be. Linda's shoulders shook as she cried. I'm not lying. I'm not pretending. I came here because this is the only way to prove to you that I'm your mother, and that I never gave up on you. The audience's emotional reaction was visible. Tears in some eyes, disbelief in others. Dr. Phil leaned back, absorbing the tension in the room. He could feel that something deeper was buried beneath the surface. A secret, a lie, a missing piece that neither of them had addressed yet. He picked up the DNA envelope again, tapping it lightly against his palm. This, he said quietly, is going to answer questions both of you have carried for over 2 decades. But I need both of you to understand something. Whatever is inside this envelope, it will change your lives. Eric swallowed hard. Linda dabbed at her tears. And deep down, everyone in the studio knew. When the truth finally came out, someone's world was about to shatter. The studio felt heavier now, like every breath, every heartbeat, every whispered word carried the weight of decades. Part 2 had left viewers hanging on a thread, and as Part 3 began, that thread was starting to snap. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his tone calm but firm. Before we move toward the DNA results, there are serious inconsistencies we need to address. He picked up a stack of papers beside him, messages, emails, statements from people in both Linda's and Eric's lives. The audience watched in total silence. Linda, Dr. Phil said gently, you claim you tried to reach Eric several times, but his grandparents deny ever receiving a single message from you. Linda's face flushed with frustration. Because they're lying, Dr. Phil. They always lied. They told everyone I was unstable. They wanted to keep him for themselves. Her voice cracked. They wanted my baby. Eric inhaled sharply, visibly torn. My grandparents raised me. They fed me, protected me, gave me a life. I have no reason to believe they would lie about something this big. Linda turned to him, eyes red and swollen. I know you don't trust me, but all I ever wanted was to get you back. I had no one back then. Your grandparents were powerful, respected in our town. I was just a scared girl who didn't know how to fight them. Eric shook his head, jaw tightening. You keep saying you fought for me, but you never showed up. Not once. Not even when I turned 18. Why didn't you try to contact me then? I was old enough to understand. Linda froze. Her silence was loud. Dr. Phil picked up on it immediately. Linda, what happened when Eric turned 18? She looked down at her lap, twisting her fingers. I was going through something difficult, she whispered. My life wasn't stable enough. I was dealing with a lot of pain, a lot of regret. I didn't want to show up broken. Eric's voice cracked with anger. So you waited until I fixed your life for you? Until I became someone you could be proud of? No, Linda cried. I waited because I didn't want to bring chaos into your world. I didn't want to ruin your life. But you were supposed to be in my life, Eric snapped. The audience gasped. The pain in his voice was raw. Dr. Phil raised his hand gently. Eric, be honest. Do you want her to be your biological mother? Eric blinked rapidly. I don't know, he whispered. All I know is that I've lived my whole life wondering who I am, where I come from, why I was abandoned. His voice tightened. If she's my mother, why does it still feel like she chose to stay away? Linda sobbed into her hands. Dr. Phil gave them both a moment before addressing the audience at home. Epi kia sakti ho? DNA result in Dono KO related prove Karega ya not related? A. Related. B. Not related. Comment A or B. Let's see what you believe before the truth comes out. As the audience reacted, Dr. Phil continued. There's something else, he said. There's a neighbor from Linda's past who submitted a written statement. He pulled out a paper. According to them, during the months after Eric's birth, Linda was not only dealing with an abusive partner, but she also suffered a mental breakdown due to stress. She was hospitalized for treatment. Eric's eyes widened. You were hospitalized? He whispered, shocked. Linda nodded slowly. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want you to think I was weak or unfit. Eric leaned back, rubbing his face with both hands. This just keeps getting more confusing. My grandparents told me you abandoned me. You're saying they took me. The documents are inconsistent. The stories don't match. I don't know what to believe anymore. Dr. Phil pressed gently. But what do you feel? Eric hesitated. His voice softened. I feel like I've lived in a lie my whole life. And I don't know whose lie it was. A painful silence fell over the studio. Linda reached out a little, not touching, just reaching, hoping. Eric didn't move closer. Dr. Phil sighed. This wasn't just a DNA test to them. It was the key to their entire identity, their pain, their questions. One envelope held answers that could heal or destroy. Finally, Dr. Phil lifted the envelope again and placed it between them on the table. This has the truth, he said. And I want both of you to understand something. The truth inside this envelope doesn't guarantee a happy ending. It guarantees clarity. Eric exhaled shakily. Linda wiped her tears, nodding. And that clarity, Dr. Phil continued, will change everything. The camera zoomed in on the unopened envelope. The audience leaned forward. The room went silent. Something big was coming. Something that would shake both their worlds. The studio remained hushed, the tension almost tangible. Part 3 had left everyone on edge, but now, Part 4 would peel back another layer of the story. Dr. Phil looked at Linda and Eric, his expression serious, knowing the next moment could shift the emotional balance entirely. Before we open the DNA results, Dr. Phil began, voice calm yet commanding. There's something else that needs to be addressed. Something that's been kept from us, and perhaps from yourselves. Linda's eyes widened slightly. Eric leaned forward, gripping his knees. Both were on edge. Dr. Phil continued. Eric, Linda mentioned that your grandparents moved multiple times and blocked communication. But we've discovered something that complicates this story even more. There are witnesses who recall seeing a child, possibly you, with another woman during those early years. Eric's jaw tightened. Another woman? What are you talking about? Linda's hands trembled. I don't know what they mean, she whispered. I was separated from him, yes, but I never knew who he stayed with. I thought my child was safe with family. Dr. Phil turned to Eric. Do you remember anyone else being in your life as a child, outside your grandparents? Eric shook his head. No, nothing. That's why this is confusing. Then, a soft voice from the back of the studio interrupted. A staff member who had been silently observing stepped forward. Dr. Phil, I think there's more to this. A woman came forward last week, claiming she cared for Eric for several months as an infant. She insists she was asked to keep him safe, but never disclosed it to anyone. The studio murmured. Linda's face turned pale. Eric's eyes widened in shock. Dr. Phil leaned closer. Linda, Eric, before we open the envelope, I need you to hear this. Someone very close to your past may have played a role you weren't aware of, and this may explain some of the inconsistencies we've seen. Linda's hands flew to her mouth. I didn't know. I thought I was alone in trying to find him. I never imagined someone else had him. Eric's face contorted with confusion and hurt. So all these years, someone else was raising me, or keeping me safe, and no one thought to tell me. The audience whispered among themselves. Cameras captured every flicker of emotion, shock, fear, disbelief, sorrow. Dr. Phil paused and let the silence settle. He knew the anticipation of the audience and the guests was building to a near unbearable point. He then said slowly, "These are the missing pieces. And now, for the first time, You both are seeing the bigger picture. The truth is layered, and sometimes, the most painful part is realizing how many people have been protecting or hiding it from you. Linda shook her head in tears. I never knew. I never knew anyone else was involved. Eric's hands covered his face. I don't know what to think anymore. Everything I believed, it's all crumbling. Dr. Phil nodded solemnly. And this is exactly why the DNA test matters. It's not just about confirming biological relationships. It's about clarifying the story you've both lived. The story that has shaped your lives. He reached for the envelope on the table and let his fingers rest lightly on it. The truth inside this envelope will answer some questions, but it will also raise others. And you must be prepared to face them. Linda's breathing was uneven. Eric's body stiffened. The audience collectively leaned forward, sensing the magnitude of what was coming. Then, just as Dr. Phil was about to announce the next step, a new revelation came from a quiet corner of the studio. An older man stepped forward, visibly nervous. I was there when Eric was an infant. I helped his mother hide him from danger. I didn't tell anyone because I was sworn to secrecy, but I can confirm. Eric's life was protected all those years. Linda gasped. You knew? And you didn't tell me? The man nodded solemnly. I was following instructions. I wanted to keep him safe. I never meant to hurt you or Eric. Eric's eyes filled with tears. Safe? All this time, and I didn't even know? Dr. Phil looked at them both and addressed the audience. This is why family stories are often more complicated than they seem. Sometimes, people act with the best intentions, but the consequences ripple for decades. The atmosphere in the studio was electric. Everyone knew the DNA envelope was no longer just an object. It was the key to unraveling the entire mystery. Dr. Phil picked up the envelope, holding it firmly. In a few moments, everything will be revealed. The truth will no longer be hidden. Brace yourselves, because once this is opened, nothing will ever be the same. The camera zoomed in on the sealed envelope. The crowd leaned in collectively. Both Linda and Eric held their breath. The room felt suspended in time, everyone waiting for the revelation that would change everything. The studio was dead silent. Every eye was fixed on the table where the small manila envelope lay, unassuming, yet holding a truth powerful enough to shake 2 lives forever. Dr. Phil's hand hovered over it, his calm demeanor hiding the tension that ran through every inch of the room. This is it, he said, his voice measured but heavy. The moment that answers questions that have haunted these 2 people for decades. Linda's hands trembled on her lap. Her knuckles were white from gripping each other so tightly. She looked at Eric, eyes pleading. Please, whatever it says, know I did this for you. I never wanted to hurt you. Eric's gaze was sharp, yet vulnerable. I just want the truth, Mom, whoever you really are. His voice cracked as he said it. Dr. Phil slowly picked up the envelope, turning it in his hands as if weighing the power it held. The audience leaned forward, some on the edge of their seats, others covering their mouths in anticipation. The cameras zoomed in on the envelope as if it were the most valuable object in the world. He looked at both of them. I want you to remember one thing. The truth is not always easy, and it doesn't always give you the comfort you hope for. But it is the only thing that will set you free. Then, in one careful motion, Dr. Phil opened the envelope. He pulled out the DNA report and unfolded it slowly, as if each second of hesitation could absorb the tension in the room. The audience collectively held their breath. Linda's eyes widened. Eric's hands tightened into fists. Dr. Phil scanned the results. His eyebrows rose slightly. He didn't speak at first, just let the room sit in anticipation. The silence stretched, almost unbearable. Finally, he looked up at them. His voice caught slightly. This changes everything. The report revealed something shocking. Linda, who had believed she was Eric's mother all along, was not biologically related to him. The test showed that another woman, previously unknown, was Eric's real biological mother. The room froze. Linda's mouth opened, then closed. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. No, it can't be. I raised him. I searched for him. Her voice broke entirely. Eric staggered back slightly, blinking rapidly, processing the revelation. I'm not your son. His voice trembled with a mixture of disbelief, anger, and grief. All this time, everything I believed wrong? Dr. Phil placed a hand on the table, steadying the moment. It's true, but it doesn't erase the time you've shared, the bond you've built. Bonds are created not just by biology, but by care, love, and commitment. The studio gasped. Some audience members whispered, others covered their faces. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of raw emotion. Linda collapsed into the chair, sobbing uncontrollably. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was his mother, but I was wrong. Eric's shoulders shook. I need to process this. My whole identity, it's been flipped upside down. Dr. Phil leaned back, exhaling slowly. Sometimes the truth hits harder than we expect. Sometimes it shakes the foundation of everything we know. He looked at the producers, then at the cameras. We're going to pause the show for a moment. Everyone needs a minute to absorb this. For the first time in the history of the program, Dr. Phil halted filming mid-show. The crew froze, the cameras held their focus, and the audience remained in stunned silence. No one spoke. The envelope sat on the table, a small piece of paper with monumental consequences. Outside, viewers were glued to their screens. Online platforms were already lighting up with reactions, as millions tried to grasp the emotional magnitude of the revelation. In the studio, Linda finally whispered, I'm so sorry. Eric's voice softened, though still laced with pain. I know. I need time. Dr. Phil nodded gently. And you will have that. But the truth is finally out. The cameras lingered on the envelope one last time before slowly panning over the stunned faces of Linda, Eric, and the audience. A moment frozen in shock, grief, and the unrelenting reality of truth. The studio remained in stunned silence for several moments after the DNA results were revealed. Linda's sobs echoed across the stage while Eric struggled to comprehend the shocking truth. The weight of decades of confusion, expectation, and false hope hung heavy in the air. It was a silence charged with disbelief and heartbreak, the kind that made the audience lean forward instinctively, unable to look away. Dr. Phil cleared his throat softly, stepping closer to both of them. I know this is overwhelming, he said gently. What you've learned is hard. It's confusing. And yes, it may feel unfair. But it's the truth, and facing it is the first step toward understanding and healing. Linda wiped her tear-streaked face. I thought I was doing the right thing all these years, she whispered. I raised him. I searched for him. I loved him. And now, I find out I wasn't even his biological mother. Her hands shook as she spoke, and the raw vulnerability in her voice pierced the room. Eric exhaled sharply, leaning back in his chair. So, all this time, I believed I had one mother, and now, none of it was true? Who am I then? Who do I even belong to? His voice cracked with a mixture of anger, pain, and confusion. Dr. Phil stepped closer to Eric, resting a hand on the young man's shoulder. Eric, biology doesn't define who you are. Your experiences, the people who loved you, and the choices you've made. That's who you are. And right now, you're standing on the edge of a truth that will help you rebuild your story. The audience's reactions were raw. Tears, gasps, and whispers filled the studio. Cameras captured every flicker of emotion. Some viewers nodded in sympathy, others shook their heads, unable to comprehend the impact of such a revelation. At that moment, a staff member came forward with a note from a relative connected to Eric's biological mother, the woman who had been missing from his life. The note revealed that she had been trying to locate him for years, but circumstances prevented her from reaching him sooner. The revelation added another layer to the already overwhelming situation. Dr. Phil paused and addressed the audience at home. If you were in Eric's shoes, how would you feel right now? Angry? Confused? Forgiving? Comment honestly. Let's see what you would do in a moment like this. He turned back to the stage. Linda, you've loved him like your own child, and that matters. Eric, you've been blindsided by the truth, and that matters too. Both of you have a choice now, to let this moment define your pain, or to let it redefine your understanding of family, love, and truth. Eric's hands trembled as he finally spoke, softer this time. I, I don't know if I can forgive the lies, but I can see she truly cared for me, even if it wasn't in the way I expected. Linda nodded slowly. I never stopped loving you, Eric. Even if I wasn't your biological mother, I wanted to be there. I wanted to give you everything I could. Dr. Phil smiled gently. And that is the essence of family. Sometimes, love is not determined by blood, but by presence, care, and commitment. As the moment sank in, the room felt lighter, though the emotional weight was still palpable. The revelation of the DNA test had shattered old perceptions, but it also opened a door to understanding, reconciliation, and growth. The audience began to clap slowly, some quietly crying, some nodding in agreement. Cameras captured Linda and Eric reaching out, touching hands, a gesture of acknowledgement, connection, and tentative forgiveness. Dr. Phil addressed both the studio and the viewers at home. Life doesn't always give us answers the way we expect. Sometimes, it gives us more questions. But facing the truth is what allows us to grow stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The moment lingered. Viewers online were already reacting on social media, sharing their shock, their tears, and their admiration for the courage shown by both Linda and Eric. Comments flooded in from around the world, people relating, empathizing, and debating what they would do in the same situation. The emotional intensity slowly transitioned to a sense of resolution. Dr. Phil concluded, "Today, we've witnessed a truth that has rocked 2 lives. But we've also seen courage, vulnerability, and the power of honesty. Let this be a reminder. Truth, no matter how difficult, is always worth facing." Linda and Eric sat together, a fragile but genuine connection forming in the wake of the revelation. The studio lights dimmed slightly, capturing a quiet, emotional aftermath that felt almost sacred. The cameras slowly panned across the audience, recording the collective reflection of the moment, shock, empathy, and the realization that love and truth could coexist, even in the hardest circumstances. The studio was quiet, the tension from the previous hours slowly settling into a mix of relief, reflection, and fragile hope. Linda and Eric sat side by side, still processing the whirlwind of emotions brought on by the DNA revelation. Though the shock remained fresh, there was a subtle sense of connection forming, a bond built not on biology, but on shared vulnerability and honesty. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his tone both compassionate and firm. What we've witnessed today is more than a DNA test. It's a story about truth, resilience, and the complexity of family. Life doesn't always give us neat answers, but it gives us moments like these, moments where we can choose how to respond. Linda wiped away tears. "I know I wasn't his biological mother," she said softly, "but I raised him, loved him, and searched for him all these years. I hope he can see that my intentions were always genuine." Eric nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "I see that now. It's confusing and painful, but I also see how much she cared. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I want to start understanding what family can mean beyond biology." The audience watched in silence, captivated by the sincerity of the moment. Cameras panned over the crowd, catching nods of understanding, some quiet tears, and a collective sense of reflection. The studio, which had been tense and almost unbearable just moments before, now held an atmosphere of hope and contemplation. Dr. Phil addressed them both in the audience. "This story is powerful not because of what the DNA test revealed, but because of how people responded. Both of you showed courage, honesty, and vulnerability. And that's what makes a family, not just blood, but care, accountability, and respect." He turned slightly toward the camera, speaking directly to viewers at home. "Millions of people around the world are watching this story, and each one of you can take something from it. The importance of truth, the power of empathy, and the realization that love and family are more than what's written in a test result." Outside the studio, the story began to go viral. Social media exploded with reactions, hashtags trending worldwide, people sharing clips of the emotional moment, discussing the lessons of honesty, courage, and compassion. Millions praised Eric's patience and Linda's dedication, even in the face of devastating truth. Dr. Phil concluded with a final message, his voice steady and warm. No matter what life throws at you, the truth will find its way. And when it does, it gives us a chance to grow, forgive, and move forward. Today, we've seen that firsthand. Linda reached out tentatively, and Eric took her hand. It was a small gesture, but symbolic, a step toward reconciliation and understanding. In that moment, both of them realized that family is not solely defined by biology, but by presence, love, and the choices we make for one another. The cameras slowly zoomed out, capturing the studio lights reflecting softly off the audience's faces. The show ended on a note of reflection, inspiration, and emotional clarity, a story that would continue to resonate with viewers around the world. Dr. Phil addressed the viewers one last time. If you believe that truth and love can change lives, comment "truth" below and subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us of the power of honesty, courage, and family. As the credits rolled, the DNA envelope remained on the table, a small object with monumental consequences, a symbol of the truth that finally came to light, and the beginning of a new chapter for Linda and Eric.